Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles, welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver, at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, former mayor of California Beach Town, best-selling author Debbie Peterson. We're coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio podcasts and networks, 26 global audio and video platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud. You take a breath. Vimeo, Stitcher Radio, Blog Talk Radio, Castbox, Mixta. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not going to bore you. In fact, we're proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands, and #1 caregiver podcast on Player FM of the top 50. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. Darlene Fuchs, say that again?
Fuchs.
Fuchs. Why couldn't I remember that? Darlene Fuchs. The compelling voice behind Get in the Boat, a memoir of love, loss, and the dance with dementia, explores unfiltered emotions of caregiving revealed in her father's unfiltered journals. Through compelling storytelling, she invites readers on an intimate voyage, shedding light on the complexities of love and loss amidst the tumultuous currents of dementia. I'm dealing with that right now with my aunt, and it is tumultuous. Her narrative offers a profound glimpse into the challenges of caregiving, providing a tender portrayal of a husband navigating the complexities of tending to his wife. But before we get started, I do want to take this moment and thank my last week's guest, Dr. Bradley Nelson, Trapped Emotions and the 6 Underlying Causes of Disease. And just to remind you, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other 26 global networks that I mentioned earlier. All right, enough of that. Darlene, welcome to the Caregiver Dave Show. We are so excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here, Dave.
Oh, good. It's great when we're both excited. And I'm sure Debbie's excited. I like to ask my guests just, who is Darlene Fuchs, right?
Yeah, I am still trying to figure a lot of that out.
Darlene Fuchs, and why was she placed on this earth? Okay.
What I thought I was initially, a mom, a corporate person, buyer, real estate, all those things that I thought were important, I ended up finally realizing when I grew up that they really weren't that important.
That's called wisdom.
Yeah, I wish I had learned it way, way earlier. I'm just before my 70s, so it's like, oh, no, I would have liked to have had about 20 more years before that. But, I'd like to think of myself as hope. I was there for the people that I worked with. I always felt that I gave a sense of hope. I'm not always hopeful for myself. I'm still trying to learn that. I'm very good when it comes to hope for other people. I've always learned that I always thought that faith would get me out of difficult situations. But as I've gone through life, I'm only finding that faith helps me handle my situation. And I've been thrown in, like many caregivers, into a caregiving role at different points in my life, whether it was to my in-laws, suffering from cancer in different situations, my 3.5-year-old grandson who also passed from brain cancer. And I thought things were all over, Dave. My mom came back from living on the East Coast out here to Illinois and found out real quick that she was having a problem with dementia and needed more help than my dad could give her. So
you're like Job, just one thing after the other, huh?
Yeah, just don't send all the bugs. I'm not into that. Not into that. So I found out that pain continues on even as we lose people. And it's our faith that gets us through the pain. It doesn't take it away. It just gets us through. So I think my role in this world is, if nothing else, is to give hope but to give compassion and to give guidance where I have found myself searching for answers. And now if I have them, I can hopefully guide other people through that journey so they get through a little bit quicker.
Mm.
So even though the road's not easy at times, I'm grateful when I can touch someone else's life. And I guess that's my purpose, is that it just, I'm here to help and to give hope and compassion.
So you wrote the book, Get in the Boat, which is a curious title. I can think that it might mean a million different things. What motivated you to write it, and why the title?
The title was from my father. When he was taking care of my mom, living in an assisted living facility 2 minutes from me, he ended up having a lady named Helen Brown who did different teaching for caregivers throughout the community. And he once told her she had read his journals, and he said, caregiving is like being in a boat. With Gail with her dementia, I can't pull the boat, I can't push the boat. All I can do is sit in with her, and I can kind of use the oars to navigate around rough waters, but she's the captain of that boat, so I'm just sitting in it. Right
Interesting.
before he passed away, he had said, please turn these journals into a book, and this is what I want the name of the book to be.
Oh,
That's
wow. Debbie, you got anything you want to ask?
Well, before the show, we were
Darlene?
talking about how you progressed to being a caregiver and the very many iterations. I wonder, maybe you could explain some of those or kind of tell that story to some of the listeners.
Caregiving in the book that I'm writing is about dementia, but caregiving in general covers anyone that needs help and you're the person taking care of them. So I found on my caregiving journey, if that's what we want to call it, is taking care of a father-in-law that had progressive liver cancer and stayed with us 24/7, listening to baby monitors, wondering if he was still breathing. And that was my first very experience with caregiving. After that, my mother-in-law, because of the loss of him and not having anyone really to socialize with, we found it necessary to take a complete different turn. And she went into a facility that had independent, assisted, and full care facilities. And she transitioned through those as she got older and became more ill. So I had to go through the whole thing of how do you deal with other caregivers? How do you navigate that and become a team concept to take care of her? Thought that was over, and then my daughter had my grandson and found out that at 3 years old he had medulloblastoma, which is cancer on the brainstem. And now I'm trying to help her navigate that for 6 months before he passed, of how to best be a caregiver to a child. Completely different. They are definitely not as demanding. Thank God for technology and the iPad, because that kept them focused through some traumatic situations. And once again, thinking that was done, my mom and dad decided that he would move back to Illinois to be close to me, and ended up, I found out my mom had dementia. So I went down that whole journey and found that that was a very difficult road to go down. But we made it through faith and through perseverance. Yeah. Made it through.
I have to ask, how did is it your daughter who had the child who,
Yeah.
how did she and how is she handling the death of a 3-year-old? I can't even imagine my 3-year-old granddaughter leaving us. She's like the light of our the world revolves around her, and how are they doing?
It's been 9 years, so Noah would be
9 years. Wow.
be 12 on April 13th. And I'll tell you, the worst thing as being a parent caregiver to a child that's lost their child, I was always, as a mom, able to get a Band-Aid out, put a Band-Aid on, give a couple kisses, and everything was going to be all right. This was the first time as a once removed, I call it, caregiver, where you're not just helping to take care of the child that's sick, but your own child is in need of care. And I found as a grandparent, there was no time for me to take care of myself unless it was in the shower, just letting everything go. And to this day, I think I still miss Noah a lot, but I think the hardest part still is to see my child suffering and still trying to navigate it. There's not much I can do but just be able to listen and support for her.
So it's really still affecting her after 9 years.
It is. They just moved 6 months ago to Tennessee because of her husband's work. So I'm hoping they get somewhat of a new start. I know those waves of emotion, you become used to those, but sometimes you can be hit with a tsunami. And that's when you just...
She has other children?
Yeah, my 13-year-old granddaughter. Yeah.
How did it affect her faith?
My kids have faith that's unbelievable. I'll be honest. My dad was a pastor and a missionary, so I always thought my faith was strong. But when it came to some of these moments, I was one of the first ones to question my faith. And I don't know. I don't believe it was myself raising my kids the right way. I think God just stepped in, and that was the one thing that was able to get me through a lot of times, is to be able to focus on them and to see how strong their strength was. And if they,
So your daughter had great faith.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, a tragedy can either make you bitter or better, as Joyce Meyer says. And yeah, I've had my own tragedies. And my wife had a stroke, lost her speech, paralyzed on one side. Still, after 27 years, can't talk, can't walk. But we navigate it, and I don't know how I would have done it without my faith. A lot of people don't understand how you do it, But God gives you tailor-made trials and grace to handle them. And nobody else could handle what I'm handling. I probably can't handle what they're handling, but I don't have to. You handle what you have to handle, and what God gives you grace for. Debbie?
Well, and thank God, Dave, that your wife is still with us and is still that vibrant, wonderful, happy, at least when I've been around her, charming, delightful woman.
You hear that, honey?
And you'll see I'm wiping away tears because I have very close family friends who had a son who died of the same thing about 12 years ago, and the tears don't go away. And I didn't expect to be crying through this interview, but that grief is so overwhelming when it happens to dear friends as well.
Yeah. And I find it amazing. Are not always easy, but we have to be grateful for the opportunity that we have to make it through, and then because of that, to be a testimony to help others to touch their life and make it through. And I don't know about you, Dave and Debbie, but when you've been through some kind of a tragedy and you give someone else a hug, it's totally different if they've been through something too than someone that hugs you and says, "I'm sorry." You feel it. I don't care how many years it's been, you understand.
Yeah, and I'm going
and
through
there's
that
something
with my aunt.
about sorry, Dave, what was that?
I was just saying I'm going through that with my aunt who's in the hospital now. She has dementia, but she broke her ankle in 5 places. And now, we have to take her out of her home, and she lived with her boyfriend. And so we're trying to get them both approved for Medicaid, so that we can put them in this very nice assisted living place in Glendale where my mother was. And, they're just a cute little couple who love each other. She's 84, he's 88. And they're like the two in the Notebook, So, but it's tragedy. It's tragic watching them and watching her go through the mental decline, and he's suffering a little from it too. But you know what? Together, they're one, and they help each other, and they need each other, and I'm not going to separate them.
I think that there's so much to be said, and I know we've had family tragedies where a nephew was killed in a car accident at the age of 27, and it's devastating. And I'm still devastated. His parents are still devastated. You don't really ever get over those kinds of things. And what I what I know is that if you can sit with people, even as we are in a podcast, that all people really need a lot of times is simply to have you there, simply to have you sitting with them. And of course, the hugs make a huge difference too. But just
Yeah.
being there, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know what to say. Just your presence can be so helpful.
Yeah. So, Darlene, how can caregivers best support seniors facing dementia? I mean, it's different than a stroke. It's different than, broken ankle. It's different than Parkinson's. It's in its own category. And I used to think a stroke was the worst thing in the world that could happen to a person because they can't speak. They know what they want to say, they can't speak. But no, it's dementia now, where you don't even know what's going on. Explain.
In my mom's case, she had frontal lobe dementia, and she lost her ability to speak very early on. It was her cognitive ability. She was always the bookkeeper at home. Her ability to balance a checkbook, things like that, they went out the window pretty quick. But her ability to communicate was so difficult. She would bat, and I swear, if we can translate the hieroglyphics on, these pyramids, why can't be able to get someone to translate what it is that they're saying?
Yeah, or make a backup of our brain and then download it in case something like this happens. Why can't they do that? You can do it to a computer.
Right. But as far as what caregivers can do, I always say, first thing, if you can, and it's for yourself and it's for the person you're taking care of, is establish some kind of routine. If you don't have a routine, everything is going to be overwhelming. And that in itself makes the one that you're taking care of feel very insecure. So creating that sense of security, letting them feel secure, very important. Even if they're not able to speak to you or they keep asking the same question or they're agitated, a lot of it is because they're afraid. They are just as unsure of what the future is going to bring as each one of us is. And every case of dementia is so different. Clear communication, if you can, get down to their level. Give them eye-to-eye contact. Keep the questions very simple with a yes and no. If you can do that, wait, be patient, answer, because they're not always going to be able to answer you quickly and you may have to repeat it. Little things like they pick up on our facial, abilities they know if we're not smiling or if we're agitated, our gestures that we use. Make sure that you're in check, because even though you think they might not hear it in your voice or see it, they do pick up on that. And you have to get for yourself as the caregiver and for them physical activity, whether it's putting them in a wheelchair, taking them for a walk, getting fresh air for both people so that you can get away and have a little bit of respite time together. I think that's very important. It's just all of those things, and some of them don't work. It's trial and error. You can have a whole lot of things and find 5 things that work for you might not work for the next person, but it's definitely worthwhile to keep trying.
So what are the chapters in your book? I mean, is there a chapter on how to keep caregivers safe in the home, how to make your home safe, and what else is in there?
This is not a textbook. It was literally taken from 6 years of my dad's journaling. I took 12 spiral wound books and gave them to someone to type up because I couldn't read his writing.
Well, give us an example of one of his journals.
The very first chapter starts out what a typical day would be like for my mom. A lot about pooping and having to her hallucinating. And one of the very big things that you'll find that are ongoing in the book is what I call TTT, which is touch, travel, and talk, because there is so much in dementia where they are constantly on the move, touching things, traveling, moving things, babbling. And a lot of it is from my dad's perspective. I found out things about my dad as a female that I didn't necessarily want to know, but how men deal with the lack of intimacy with their wife. And he went into a lot of that and how he was able to make what we might think as non-intimate moments very intimate for both of them. So it really goes into some of the non-traditional things that caregivers face because he was journaling on his experience for 24/7 for 6 years. So it's different.
Well, what would you like to talk about that we haven't discussed yet before we wrap it up?
You know, a lot of people go through the why is it so hard to be a caregiver? And I found this with my dad. He used to golf all the time. He gave it up when he took care of my mom, and I kept trying to encourage him. But it would always be his feeling that he needed to be in charge. No one was going to give the quality of care to my mom that he was giving. He couldn't stop worrying. What if I'm gone and I'm not there and something happens? Or the guilt halfway through his golf game saying, no, I can't finish my golf game because I shouldn't be doing this. I should be back home. So I would say to caregivers that you have to get rid of that initial caregiver mindset, even if you're exhausted. People may assume they can do everything for a short period, but dementia is not something that is going to be here for a week or a year. Sometimes it's many, many years, and that's not sustainable. So you do need to find a way to find help. And as far as the worrying that he had about not being there, if something would happen, you can't be there 24/7. An emergency may happen no matter if you're, down to take a lunch or you're running to the bank. So you have to put that to the back and realize that, yes, your loved one does depend on you, but when it comes right down to it, you need to be somewhat selfish about taking care and time for yourself, because only then can you be the best caregiver for the person that you're responsible for.
Debbie, you got anything?
Well, just a big thank you. You've given us some incredibly practical tips that are really helpful. And I've been taking notes. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm typing in my phone. Thank you.
So how difficult was it to take the journals and just, transcribe them into the book? Did they need some help and, tweaking to make it into a story, or what is it? Is it a story? How did you do it?
So I took what was a journal, and that would not be because it's every day what happened.
Sure.
I had to take it and put it into what I would think would be chapters, interesting chapters, and then take parts of that journal, and as I went through it, highlight it in different colors so I knew which parts would go to which chapter. And
so you did a lot of organizing.
You had to do a lot of organizing.
Synchronizing, yes.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have been
a mess, yeah. Well, good for you. Thank you for that. And I always tell caregivers, journal, because you never know. It may be the next book, And thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It was a great show. And I just can't believe how fast this time has gone. So how can our listeners get a hold of you, Darlene, if they want to pick your brain?
This way is to go to the website, getintheboatbook.com. And from there, you'll find Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the different links. The book is on Amazon, so you can look up Get in the Boat, and you'll find it there. And I'm on so many Facebook sites answering people's questions, but
really,
I can't just do a thumbs up or thumbs down. It doesn't work for me anymore. So
is this your first book?
This is my first book.
Yeah. Will there be another one?
Not on this specific, but there is another one in the making.
Got the author in you going, huh?
Yes, it did.
Well, again, a reminder, all our live shows become recorded pod and video casts on all our platforms mentioned before, like, YouTube and such. My caregiverdave.com is a free membership support community. Helps people with free gifts, resources, videos, etc., and even free coaching call. So please click the like or follow button below on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this interview on. It helps us reach even more caregivers by improving Google's search engine algorithms. And don't forget my Facebook page, Caregiver Dave, 34,000. Just it's a support group. If you want to talk with other caregivers, like-minded, sometimes that's the best way to get through the day. Just realize you're not the only one going through this, and it's normal. So to all my listeners out there, thanks again for tuning in each and every week, every time, same channel, and may God richly bless you. Bye-bye. Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this, to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance.